You know that feeling? Like everyone's buzzing about the newest management trick, the latest guru,
Mm.
and you just want to cut through it all, find out what really works, the stuff that lasts.
Yeah, the fundamental, something solid you can actually use day in, day out.
Exactly. Something you can really sink your teeth into and apply to what you're working on.
Well, that's exactly what we're aiming for today on the deep dive.
We're not just, skimming another business book.
No surface level stuff here. We're digging deep into a classic, trying to unearth those insights that you, listening right now, can hopefully use to make a real difference.
And the classic we've got our virtual shovels out for is In Search of Excellence, Lessons from America's Best-Run Companies by Peters and Waterman.
Ah, yes. That one made some waves back in the day.
Huge waves. It was the #1 national bestseller. And for good reason, right? It tackled a big question. What actually makes these incredibly successful companies?
Wow, excellent.
And our mission today, for you listening, is to really distill that. Pull out the key ideas, explain them simply, in a way that connects with examples that make sense.
And crucially, figure out the tangible takeaways. What can you do with this stuff? Starting, like, now.
Okay, let's dive in. So, Peters and Waterman, when they started this whole project, they weren't exactly fans of the standard management thinking at the time.
Right, they were pretty skeptical of what they called the rational model. The heavy focus on structure, hierarchies, quantitative analysis, just the numbers.
Like Alfred Chandler's work, focusing on strategy and structure. That was kind of the dominant way of thinking.
Absolutely. And while Peters and Waterman didn't dismiss strategy or structure entirely, they felt that approach often missed, well, the people.
The human element and, importantly, the whole messy business of execution, actually getting things done.
Which they saw as critical in the really top companies. It wasn't just about having the perfect plan on paper.
So to try and get a better handle on this bigger picture, they came up with the McKinsey 7S framework.
Ah, the 7S. Good one. Structure, strategy, systems.
Skills, staff, style, and the big one, shared values.
Mm-hmm.
And if you picture it, shared values is right there in the middle.
Exactly, like the hub of the wheel. Their point was that truly effective organizations have all these 7S's aligned, working together. But it's those shared values, the core beliefs, that really hold it all together and drive how people actually behave.
So for you listening, maybe think about your own team or workplace. How clear are those shared values? How central are they really?
Good question.
Now, how did they actually pick these excellent companies? It wasn't just like a vibe check.
No, definitely not. They used some pretty rigorous criteria looking back over 20 years, 1961 to 1980.
They look at things like compound asset growth, compound equity growth.
Right, and also the ratio of market value to book value, kind of a measure of how investors felt about their future prospects.
And of course, financial returns, return on capital, return on equity, return on sales, the usual suspects.
But, and this is interesting, they didn't just look at the financials.
No, they layered in other factors too, like innovation based on what industry experts thought, and reputation.
Which suggests they were looking for something a bit deeper than just, hitting the quarterly numbers.
Yeah.
A more sustained, holistic kind of success.
And the companies they ended up studying were really diverse. You had tech giants like IBM, digital equipment.
Consumer goods like P&G.
Yeah, industrial players like Caterpillar, service leaders like Delta, Marriott.
Big project managers like Bechtel, resource companies like Exxon. A real cross-section of American business at the time.
So the big takeaway here seems to be that, yes, financial performance mattered, obviously.
You have to be profitable.
Right. But it wasn't the only thing. Excellence, in their view, involves something more, maybe that qualitative edge you mentioned.
Exactly, something beyond just the balance sheet.
Okay, this leads us nicely into part 2 of their thinking, toward new theory. This is where they really start challenging that old rational model.
Yeah, they basically argue that management thinking had become too narrow, too focused on the stuff you could easily count and analyze.
And in doing so, it was missing crucial things like, company culture, the human dynamics.
They even mentioned that book, The American Challenge by Servan Schreiber. There was this anxiety back then that maybe American management wasn't keeping up, that it was too rigid.
And they bring in Thomas Kuhn's idea of a paradigm shift.
Right. They felt management theory needed its own paradigm shift and needed to move beyond seeing organizations as just like logical machines.
Because pure logic and analysis have their limits, don't they? Especially when people are involved.
Definitely. They referenced someone named Leavitt who talked about management having 3 parts: pathfinding, figuring out where to go.
Strategy, basically.
Yeah. Then decision-making, choosing the route, and then implementation, actually making the journey.
Okay.
And Peters and Waterman felt the rational model obsessed over the decision-making bit
Choosing the route.
and kind of neglected the other two, especially the implementation, the doing.
Which brings us to this really fascinating concept they introduce. Man waiting for motivation.
I love that phrase. It directly counters that idea of people as just purely logical cogs in the machine.
It suggests there's something more fundamental driving us, right?
Absolutely. And this is super relevant for anyone listening. They argue we can't just treat people like, economic units responding only to bonuses.
There's intrinsic motivation.
Exactly. That inner drive. Most people want to do a good job. They want to contribute, be seen as competent, as winners, even in small ways.
They have that great line. All of us are self-centered, suckers for a bit of praise, and generally like to think of ourselves as winners.
It's so true, and it raises a flag about systems that inherently create lots of losers.
Like those rigid sales quotas where, mathematically, a big chunk of the team is guaranteed to fail month after month.
Yeah, they mentioned studies showing in some companies, 60% of the salespeople think of themselves as losers. Imagine the impact of that.
Terrible for morale.
Oh.
And productivity, probably.
So instead, they point towards B.F. Skinner's work on positive reinforcement.
Rewarding the good stuff, not just punishing the bad.
Precisely. It's much more effective long-term. Building people up, encouraging the behaviors you want to see more of.
And the feedback, the praise. It needs to be genuine, doesn't it? Not just generic platitudes.
Oh, absolutely. Tied to real achievements. They point out that constant, predictable praise loses its punch.
Right.
What really matters, they suggest, is that intangible but ever so meaningful attention from top management, just being seen, acknowledged specifically.
That makes sense. Like a leader taking a moment to say, hey, great job on that specific report. I noticed X, Y, and Z.
That carries weight. And they also bring in Festinger's social comparison theory.
Okay, what's that?
It's just the idea that we naturally figure out how we're doing by comparing ourselves to others around us.
Ah, right. So fostering a team where people feel they're part of something successful, something respected, that's important too.
Definitely. It taps into that desire to be associated with winning.
And this is where the softer stuff comes in. But it's actually really powerful. Things like stories, slogans, company legends.
They create that shared identity, that sense of purpose.
They quote someone saying people need more than just the organization charts or detailed procedures and rules. They need a story.
A narrative they can buy into, feel part of. It gives meaning beyond just the tasks. So for you listening, what's the story being told where you work? Is it a compelling one?
Does it create that sense of shared commitment?
Exactly. That's the power of it.
Okay, so we've seen the limits of pure rationality and the huge importance of motivation and meaning. Now we get to part 3. Back to basics.
And the first basic is fascinating, managing ambiguity and paradox.
Sounds a bit academic, but it's actually very practical, I think.
It really is. The core idea is that these excellent companies aren't thrown off by complexity or uncertainty. They can handle situations where things aren't clear-cut, where there might even be contradictions.
Yeah, they don't need everything to be black and white. They can kind of hold competing ideas at the same time.
Right.
How often do we face that in real life, right?
All the time. And they referenced Richard Scott's grid of management theories, rational versus social actors, closed versus open systems.
Okay.
And they placed the excellent companies firmly in that open system social actor box. They embrace the messiness, the unpredictability of people, and the external environment.
They accept reality, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And what allows them to navigate this ambiguity? A strong culture and clear values.
Yeah. Back to values again?
Always comes back to values. They even tackle the obvious question head on. That's swell, but doesn't the business have to make money?
Yeah, the bottom line question.
And their answer is emphatic. Of course, a business has to be fiscally sound, but the excellent companies are among the most fiscally sound of all.
So the culture drives the results. It's not fluffy stuff separate from performance.
That's the key insight. The strong culture enables the strong performance. It's not an either-or.
They also mentioned chunking, just breaking down big, complex problems into smaller pieces.
Simple, but effective. A practical way for anyone to deal with feeling overwhelmed.
And another big one. These companies tolerate mistakes.
They see them not just as failures, but as opportunities to learn. It's almost like a Darwinian thing. Try stuff, adapt, learn.
Right. Not punishing every little misstep, but encouraging experimentation. So for you listening, how are mistakes treated in your environment? failure or learning.
Crucial distinction.
Okay, next basic, a bias for action. This one feels very get up and go.
Totally. It's about doing things, trying things, not getting stuck analyzing forever.
Analysis paralysis, we all know it.
They even quote Woody Allen, 80% of success is showing up.
Just get started.
Exactly. It's about experimenting, fixing things quickly, learning by doing. They talk about ready, fire, aim.
As opposed to ready, aim, aim, aim.
Right. Get something out there, see what happens, then adjust. What's one small action, you could take today on something you've been overthinking?
Good challenge.
Yeah.
They also talk about task forces in these companies.
Yeah, but not the endless committee kind. These are typically small, cross-functional teams focused on a specific problem with a short deadline. Get in, get it done, disband.
Action-oriented. And communication supports this. It's often informal, simple, relying on networks, less bureaucracy getting in the way.
Keep it moving. They give great examples too, right?
Yeah, like P&G using test markets, real-world experiments, or Bechtel's attitude of feeling fine for the doable. Let's focus on what we can do right now.
And the importance of prototypes. Quick experiments. David Ogilvy's line about advertising, the most important word is test.
Test it out.
That applies way beyond advertising. Try it, learn from it, iterate. Don't wait for perfection.
Okay, third basic principle, close to the customer. Feels fundamental, almost obvious maybe.
It does, but it's amazing how often it gets lost. It's about deeply understanding and serving whoever your customer is, external clients, internal colleagues, whoever depends on you.
They quote Lou Young saying you need to stay close to anticipate what they'll want next.
And critically, this closeness isn't just the sales department's job. It has to permeate the whole organization.
Everyone needs that customer focus, from R&D to the front desk.
How well do you really know the needs and pains of the people you're ultimately serving?
They talk about service obsessions and give some great stories.
Like Joe Girard, that legendary car salesman. His whole success was built on genuinely caring about his customers, staying in touch.
Or IBM, where customer service wasn't just a department, it was like a core belief, part of their DNA.
And these companies really go the extra mile to listen. They actively seek feedback, sometimes in really creative ways.
Like Disney obsessing over the on-stage guest experience in their parks.
Or Boeing being incredibly responsive when customers had issues with their planes.
And Caterpillar's famous commitment to parts availability, getting a needed part anywhere in the world, super fast, to keep their customers' machines running.
These aren't small things. They demonstrate a deep commitment. It's about seeing quality and reliability through the customer's eyes.
Not just your own internal metrics. What does quality really mean to them?
That's the question to keep asking.
All right, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive into In Search of Excellence, let's try and crystallize those key actionable insights for everyone listening. What can you take away and actually use?
Okay, number one, I'd say, is the absolute centrality of values and culture. It's not soft stuff, it's the foundation. Whether you're leading a company or just managing your own life, what are your core values?
Good one. Second, that bias for action. Don't get stuck. Experiment. Learn by doing. Try things out.
Third, stay relentlessly close to your customer. Understand their world, their needs, their definition of value. Serve them obsessively.
Fourth, tap into that intrinsic motivation in yourself and others. People want to contribute. They want to be winners. Recognize that. Foster it.
Yeah, positive reinforcement goes a long way. And finally, number 5, get comfortable with ambiguity. Learn to manage complexity, break things down, communicate openly, adapt. Don't expect perfect certainty.
It's amazing, isn't it? These all sound kind of basic.
They do. Back to basics, as the section title says.
But consistently applying these basics seems to be what separates the truly excellent from, well, everyone else. It's the discipline, maybe.
I think so. It's doing the simple things incredibly well, day after day.
So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Looking at those 5 areas, value culture, action, customer focus, motivation, managing complexity.
Which one of those, if you really leaned into it right now, could make the biggest difference for you in your work, your projects, maybe even your personal life?
Where could focusing on one of these basics unlock your next step towards, well, your own kind of excellence?
That's maybe the real takeaway. Thinking about how you can apply these enduring lessons, that's your next deep dive.